anything that does make it in, we still want it to feel in character. So for something like the Jill sandwich, I mean, at this point, it's like so iconic. So if it was to make it back in, I know for a fact they would probably do it well. They would do it with like humor, levity, a tip of the hat, but also find a way to have Jill react naturally in this kind of version of her. I'm sure she would be a lot less like, "You're right, Barry," and a lot more like, "The heck?"
Welcome back to Checkpoint Daily, only the most bestest show about video games and esports that you've ever heard about. Norris Howard, your host here alongside Chad Callahan and Callie Scales. We also have another special guest with us this time. We've got Nicole Tompkins, voice of Jill Valentine from the RE3 remake, Daniela Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village.
As well as Elena.
That's right, I just found that out today.
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna be shocked by her her background here.
Yeah, so Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
So obviously, first and foremost, you've clearly been working with Capcom now for a couple years. Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil Village. You seem to have a great relationship with the team. How did that sort of connection start? And what's been the experience working with Capcom so far?
Yeah, I mean, first off, just in general, it's just been such a joy. Like when you get to go in and work for a company like Capcom. I mean, they just have so many, legendary IPs, and obviously Resident Evil is so iconic and it has such a large fan base from nostalgia players all the way to new players. So just a dream come true. Originally, I auditioned, for Jill. I knew when I was going in, I looked at the art and I was like, this is Jill. This is Jill Valentine, right? Right, guys? Right? Anybody?
They didn't tell you right away who it was?
Absolutely not. They had a code name on it, but the place casting it, was like, here's the code names, the code projects, but here's the art.
Okay.
Hint, hint. And I was like, Jill, right?
No one.
So I went in pretty confident that it was Jill Valentine, and showed up accordingly, and I ended up just really hitting it off with the cinematics director Steve Knieble, who also directed the cinematics for Resident Evil Village.
Oh.
And he and the rest of the production team, I think we all just had a kind of pretty shared vision for what Miss Valentine was going to look like in this iteration of her story. And so it just kind of went from there, I did all of RE3, and then when Village came around, I sort of got the call like, hey, there's this small role, Elena, Capcom is, approved you doing it. Do you want to do Elena? I was like, oh my God, yeah, that sounds great. And then I got one of those like, actually, there's also this witch sister, small part, don't worry about it. Do you want to do that too? I was like, yeah, great. No small parts in Resident Evil Village.
Oh no.
No.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how that sort of conversation just kept happening, and they really brought back a lot of actors from RE7 and from RE3 into RE Village. I don't know if you've noticed, there's a lot of cast members that you've seen around before, which is just really cool. It's very special when a company, especially a company as massive and as big of a reach as Capcom, wants to work with us again and wants to bring us back and let us play around in other characters. Like, that's so much fun.
It's almost like a family environment that Capcom's
It
created
reminds
for
me
the
of what HBO does a lot. They reuse a lot of the same actors because they're all like approved and they know how they work and they got a relationship with the directors and stuff.
It helps too, because then you also have the ability of like when you're bouncing off of each other and reacting to each other, you already have a base understanding.
Yeah, I think that's really smart.
Yeah.
You definitely feel it in the Village in general. Like, there's just it's a lot of family themes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of family things happening everywhere, and it was very, very cool to come together with such a huge cast and really have kind of like a tight-knit little family. We've really had a lot of fun now that the game's dropped, getting to promote and hang out and really be all supportive of each other, and that's just, so lovely.
Yeah. So okay, all right, Norris. I'm gonna tell you something that you're gonna freak out about.
Okay.
All right. You know that little game called Guilty Gear Strive?
Yes.
You're talking to the voice actress of Jacko and Arya.
Shut up!
Nope, I'm not gonna shut up because
Really?
that's
No.
a legit thing. And I guess
Word?
I was able to announce that today. That
I didn't know that.
exactly. Well, no one didn't tell it today.
Breaking news.
That's so cool.
Breaking news.
That's so cool.
So can you? All right. Well, I know it's a completely different game, but like Norris has been talking about this game. I don't know, since the beta.
Since beta 1.
Beta 1. And so can you tell me about that experience a little bit? Like
what is voice acting for like that kind
yeah, I feel like that's a very different
Guilty
vibe.
Gear is crazy as balls. Like it is nuts.
Totally different world.
Yeah.
Completely different, I mean, genre type of game. You know, these Resident Evil games that we've been doing have been very kind of grounded and headed towards cinematic, even with really crazy circumstances. Like they're trying to keep it. And then you go to something like Guilty Gear, and there's just like, it's just a ball of energy. There's so much fun happening. It has such a beautiful, unique art style. And I had a blast just kind of going in there and getting to play with some very specific kind of voices, if
That's
you
so
will.
cool.
Especially for Jacko, who is such a unique, like, dual personality being, because she's also containing Arya in her. So I got to do both Arya and Jacko herself has this constant, like, internal battle happening about her identity and who she is and if she's a full person. So there was just a lot to jump into in a very, like, energetic style of kind of performance.
Listen, Chad, there are very few times where you share information with me that I don't know. And you just did it today. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Very, very much.
I held back that question for that specifically.
I really appreciate that. So, I definitely got to get into this, Nicole, because this is something that I do not get to ask a voice actor very often, all right, is when your character has really weird things to say or said about them, how do you react? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Jill sandwich. But
I am familiar with the Jill sandwich.
But
Very familiar.
if you were in the booth when that line was said, is the voice actor then empowered to be like, guys, that's stupid? Or do you just roll with it? How do you react to weird? That line is just weird.
I don't think, I don't know, like, in RE3, they definitely have some nods to some of the original lines, but they went for a very, cinematic retelling. And then in Resistance, we actually got to, like, add all of the super, like, campy stuff back in.
Right.
So if you play Resistance, like, Jill has so many, like, I'm the master of unlocking. Just like really silly, playful stuff. So I felt like they saved it all up to kind of put it in that. So I got to kind of play the best of both worlds. When it comes to like being in the booth and being like, y'all, what? No, most of the time, if something comes across and we're unsure how we want to play it, like there's a cinematics director for a reason. They'll ask for more context, or we'll find a way to make it work, because anything that does make it in, we still want it to feel in character. So for something like the Jill sandwich, I mean, at this point, it's like so iconic. So if it was to make it back in, I know for a fact they would probably do it well. They would do it with like humor, levity, a tip of the hat, but also find a way to have Jill react naturally in this kind of version of her. I'm sure she would be a lot less like, you're right, Barry, and a lot more like, the heck? Like she'd just be a lot more like, sure.
Yeah.
I think it might be but who's to say, honestly? That's the trick of the writers, but they've done such a good job so far with the RE2 remake and the RE3 remake. It's been really fun to watch them kind of mix, the nostalgia of the original games and also create something entirely new for a new generation of players.
Right.